The secret to getting 10 wins in the Bazaar every time is you're first going to need to get a lot of runs with less than 10 wins. There isn't a hero or build that guarantees a 10-win run. Sure, it'll work sometimes, but don't get too upset if you're doing poorly right now. As long as you are learning and getting better, once the meta shifts, other players will be left in the dust as you will learn strategies that just weren't viable yet. So playing suboptimally per run as you go through the natural learning curve of the Bazaar is super important to being able to reach the top of the leaderboards later. You can try and be Meta Andy that does the seemingly top meta build every patch, but if you're only using overpowered stuff, once the meta shifts, the interaction knowers are going to pass you up. Once you're going for MMR, then you can do the meta builds and just have some hope that Reynad is able to smooth out the balance over time. But you need to be bad at first. You can look at any pro player in any game. They were bad when they first started. They learned to be better. There are strategies and techniques you can carry over from other similar games, but you have to keep learning. If you get a perfect 10-win run with a meta build, what does that tell you? The meta build is good? Sometimes you can get more experience and learn more things and improve your future runs with a 3-win run. Being able to identify what went wrong and what you can do to improve in the future is more important than being able to open another chest. So since you now know that there's no secret to instantly getting a 10-win run, there are a lot of things you could be doing to speed up your learning process. Like watching videos about strategies and tactics for the Bazaar. There are some encounters in the Bazaar that have consistent choices behind the encounter, but you have to go to the encounter in order to know what's behind them. So I've made a cheat sheet that goes over all of them and what you can expect. I'm sure there's some secret and wrong ones, and sites like How Bazaar will eventually have them all, but I'll have to update this over time because they're constantly adding new ones like Hattie. I'll post a high quality version of this somewhere. Hopefully it's more readable. I know the font is very small. It was hard to fit it all. Let me know if you have some suggestions or changes, but for right now, a lot of the events I just take XP. Hopefully there's some balancing soon. I don't think anybody's taking 25 extra health on jungle runes. There are a few hero-specific encounters. Economic Seminar and Investment Pitch are Pig, Bounty Hunters is for Vanessa, and Dooley's Workshop is obviously only for Dooley. Deborah and Sparring Partner are currently disabled, and Monster Ranch just got a huge rework, so I'm sure there'll be plenty of updates in the future. Epic Battle, Mountain Pass, Escort the Convoy Risky, and Deadly Duel are all monster fights, so you gotta be prepared with your board. Before every battle, you need to double check your build. Make sure that there aren't buffs you need to sell. Check the positioning for your items and skills. And most importantly, optimize based on your opponent. You won't know who you're fighting until the hour of the fight, and there are even some fights on the side hours. So take any information that's available to you, especially for the PvE monsters, and adjust to beating them specifically. Monster fights always have the same board, so it's the best way for you to initially improve at the game. You never want to lose a monster fight. But if you can beat more than one, there's some other stuff to consider. It's not just easy, medium, and hard. It might be unlosable, 95% win rate because of crit chance, and then you couldn't possibly win. Random monsters are from your current day or the next day. Looking at the level can give a great indication of how strong the PvE opponent's supposed to be. You have to consider what items and skills are available to be rewarded. You may want to purposely make the fight last longer so you can get more permanent buffs on your build. You may need to test out different interactions on your build. Now with the new recap, it's super easy. You should be avoiding some monsters that have a crit chance that you could potentially lose on. And you need to know when you could potentially afford to lose a matchup, like in the later days, or when you're playing casual and you want more information about the boss. Monsters teach you where you are weak, so you can use the fight as an indication of where you need to improve your build. Don't get rock, paper, scissors. Some monsters are DPS, tank builds, or damage over time, and you need to be able to beat all three. Third-party resources like How Bazaar can clue you into exactly what you should expect in each monster fight, but you can't take forever in deciding. This is the game's explanation of most of the keywords in the Bazaar. They're mostly self-explanatory except for a few hidden ones. Charge doesn't carry over into the next cooldown, and it isn't supposed to charge when frozen, but passive effects still work when frozen, even though they're kind of removing most of those from the game. Burn ticks twice per second, and poison only ticks once per second. Shield reduces burn damage by half. Regeneration and lifesteal do not count as healing. Crit does not work on passives, charge, haste, freeze, slow, and regen. Healing removes a burn and a poison. Radiant items can still be targeted by freeze and slow and destroy, it just won't work. XP is super important to keep up with. Ideally, you'd want to upgrade right before the PvP fight each day. The order in which XP is given isn't intuitive. It goes in 3 steps. 1. You choose between 3 encounters. 2. The clock moves forward 1 hour. 3. When you leave the encounter, the XP is added. When choosing an encounter, you are choosing where you want to go for that hour. So the clock doesn't move until you enter the encounter. And when you leave, you get the XP. There are 8 total XP spots per level and 6 hours in a day. There is also a guaranteed PvE fight midday. So if you beat the lowest monster that has 2 XP, you will level up once per day. Except for the first day where the monsters give 1 XP. These are all the positions where you are 1 XP short before the PvP fight each day, assuming you beat the 2 XP monster. There are 4 times each day you can choose to gain XP through encounters, and the clock moves ahead an hour once you enter the encounter, and you only get the XP when you leave the encounter with the top right blue arrow. So the top and the bottom represent the same 4 hours. When you only have 2 XP filled out, choosing the elite monster is probably going to be the best choice, because the elite monster gives at least 3 XP. That combined with the 1 XP from the monster fight hour and the 2 encounter hours you have left will get you the 8 XP needed in order to level up before the PvP fight. Right now, sometimes visiting some of the merchants like the Genie's Bottle and the Thieves Guild and some of the skill vendors are able to add 1 XP when you leave the encounter. I'm assuming it'll get changed later though. Selling Vial of Blood only adds the XP to the bar. It doesn't give you the experience until you move forward on the clock to the next hour. If you happen to level at the top hour of the day, it'll do so after the PvP fight, but before the start of the next day. One of the most important aspects of the asynchronous matchmaking is the lack of a timer. It's very easy to get carried away in your first few runs where you not only have to read every single thing presented, but then on top of that you're spending time to decide what to do. But you don't even have all the variables to fully understand the decisions you're making. Spending an extra 10 minutes per run to make all the correct decisions might not be as valuable and educational as getting through an extra run every time you play. Once you know all the item and skill pools, then you can start to speed up your games. Your in-game runs should be around an IRL hour. Dwelling on fringe difference makers is ultimately a waste of time if you aren't able to know all the variables of the game. So taking your time on decisions should really only be reserved for players at super high legend who are playing optimally. What playing optimally would look like is keeping a Walter Cooler in your stash and swapping him in before every monster fight and maximizing the length of each monster fight. But it's super unrealistic to play like that, and you should be spending your time learning more useful interactions. There's a bunch of little things I'm going to run through quickly. You can press escape to avoid the trailer at the beginning of the game. Pressing spacebar swaps to the stash. Right-clicking sees the tooltips. There's only 1 enchant per item, so if it's already enchanted, it will remove the previous enchant. You can pass on skills that you don't want and it'll make your build worse because you can't remove them later. Items come into the stash on the left, so I usually put my items that I want to keep on the right and the items to cycle on the left. Encounter, merchant, and item tiers are dependent on the day, not your level. Items have an internal cooldown of 0.2 seconds, so they can go off a total of 5 times per second. And the minimum cooldown an item can have is 1 second. There are an infinite number of unique interactions like max belt or silencer to manipulate your health or cooldown, so there's too much to cover in this video.